sharp jawline, eyes like black ice, a suit that whispered power louder than most men could scream it. He sat alone in that corner booth like he owned the silence itself, and maybe he did. When Josephine walked up to him, soaking wet and desperate, she had no idea she was about to make a deal with a man who didn't just break rules. He rewrote them.
Will you be my date at my ex's
wedding? I need
wedding?
you to be my date to my ex's wedding, she said, her voice shaking. He didn't blink, didn't smile, just stared at her like he was deciding whether she was worth the chaos. 2 weeks later, they walked into that wedding together, and the second her ex saw them, his face went white. Every touch felt too real. Every whispered word cut too deep. And when Taeyun's lips brushed against her ear during their dance, sending shivers down her spine, she realized something terrifying. This wasn't fake anymore. But what she didn't see coming was the proposal. 6 months later, same venue, same gardens where her heart had been shattered. Except, this time, he was on one knee, and he had no intention of letting her go. Not after the wedding. Not ever. The question was, how did a fake date turn into forever? Welcome back, besties. This story is about to take you on a journey so intense, so full of passion and unexpected turns, that you won't be able to look away. Trust me, the twists will catch you completely off guard. If you're ready, tap the like button, get comfortable, and don't forget to subscribe and help get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything and helps bring more powerful stories like this to life. Let's get into this story. The invitation landed like a grenade wrapped in silk. Josephine stared at it, her fingers trembling against the thick ivory cardstock. Gold-embossed letters spelled out a truth she'd spent 3 years trying to outrun. Min Jae was getting married. Not to her. Never to her. To someone named Park Yuna, whose family name alone probably opened doors Josephine would never be allowed to knock on. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Busan, the same city where Min Jae had once promised her forever over soju and lies. She should throw it away. Burn it. Use it as kindling for the rage that had been simmering in her chest since the day he'd looked at her with pity and said, "You have to understand, my family has expectations." Instead, she RSVP'd yes. Alone. The word sat in her throat like poison. She could already see it. The sympathetic glances, the whispers. Poor Josephine. She really thought he'd choose her. The pitying smiles from women who'd never had to wonder if they were enough. The vindication in his mother's eyes when she saw Josephine walk in unaccompanied. Proof that she'd been right all along. Josephine pressed her palms against her kitchen counter and breathed through the nausea. No, she wouldn't give them that satisfaction. She needed a date. Someone devastating. Someone who would make Min Jae choke on his own regret. But who? The rain came down in sheets, turning Seoul streets into rivers of neon and regret. Josephine ducked into the first place she saw, a bar called Obsidian, tucked between a luxury boutique and a building that probably housed more money than she'd see in 3 lifetimes. Inside, the lighting was low and amber, the kind that made everything feel like a secret. Leather booths, marble bar top, the soft clink of crystal and the murmur of conversations, too expensive to be loud. She was soaked. Her braids dripped onto the polished floor. Her coat clung to her like a second skin. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. Josephine ordered whiskey she couldn't afford and tried not to think about the fact that she was 2 weeks away from the most humiliating night of her life. That's when she saw him. Corner booth. Alone. A man who looked like he'd been carved from shadows and cold precision. He sat with the stillness of someone who'd learned that power didn't need to announce itself. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, the kind that whispered wealth without shouting. Dark hair pushed back from a face that could have sold everything from sin to salvation. Sharp jawline, eyes that tracked the room with the lazy awareness of a predator. He wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't drinking, just sitting there like he owned the silence. Josephine's heart kicked against her ribs. This was insane. She didn't know him. Didn't know anything except that he looked like the kind of man who could walk into a room and make it his without saying a word. Exactly what she needed. She downed her whiskey in one burning gulp. Stood. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step a small act of rebellion against her better judgment. The bar seemed to stretch, the distance between her table and his booth expanding into miles. Her pulse thundered in her ears. What was she doing? What was she going to say? He noticed her when she was 3 feet away. His gaze lifted, slow and deliberate, traveling from her heels to her face with an assessment that felt almost clinical. No warmth, no invitation, just cold, patient observation. Josephine's courage nearly failed. But then she thought about Min-jae's mother, about the wedding, about walking in alone and proving every terrible thing they'd ever thought about her. She stopped at his table. "I need your help," she said, her voice steadier than her hands. He didn't move, didn't blink, just waited with the kind of silence that demanded she fill it. Josephine swallowed. "I know how this sounds. I know I look insane right now. But I need a date to my ex's wedding in 2 weeks, and you look like someone who could make him regret every choice he's ever made." Still nothing. His expression didn't shift. He could have been carved from ice. "I'll pay you," she added desperately. "Whatever you want. I just need 1 day. A few hours. You show up, stand next to me, and make me look like I've moved on to better things." He leaned back slowly, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep, textured with an accent that turned English into something more dangerous. "You're asking a stranger to pretend to be your lover." Heat crawled up Josephine's neck. "My date. Not my... I just need someone who looks like they belong in that world. Someone who won't make me look pathetic. And you think I belong in that world? You're sitting in a bar that charges $50 for whiskey wearing a suit that costs more than my car. Yes, I think you belong." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something sharper. "What's his name?" "Min-jae. Kim Min-jae." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or interest. The Kim family from Busan. Shipping empire. Josephine's stomach dropped. "You know them?" "I know of them." He tilted his head, studying her with renewed focus. "You were engaged to the heir, and he chose someone else." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Josephine said, lifting her chin. "And now I need to show up at his wedding, looking like I didn't spend 3 years being told I wasn't good enough." "Why me?" "Because you look like you've never been told you're not good enough for anything in your life." That almost smile again, colder this time. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. Black, matte, just a name and a number in silver print. Kang Tae-yoon. "Send me the details," he said. "I'll think about it." Josephine took the card, her fingers brushing his. His skin was warm, a startling contrast to everything else about him. That's it? You'll think about it. I don't make decisions for strangers in bars, miss. Josephine. Josephine Clark. Miss Clark. He said her name like he was tasting it, deciding if it was worth remembering. Send me the details. If I'm interested, I'll let you know. He turned his attention back to the window, dismissing her as completely as if she'd never existed. Josephine stood there for a heartbeat longer, pride and desperation warring in her chest. Then she turned and walked out into the rain, the black card burning in her pocket like a promise or a threat. She waited 2 days before texting him, 2 days of staring at his card, 2 days of telling herself this was ridiculous, that he'd probably already forgotten her, that men who looked like that didn't help women like her out of charity. But on the third morning, with the wedding 12 days away and her courage fraying at the edges, she typed out a message. This is Josephine Clark, the woman from Obsidian. The wedding is on the 15th in Busan, Grand Meridian Hotel. I know this is unconventional, but please, if you're still considering it, I'd appreciate a response. She hit send before she could delete it. Hours passed. Nothing. Josephine threw herself into work, curating pieces for an upcoming exhibition on African diaspora art. She lost herself in research, in emails, in anything. That wasn't obsessively checking her phone. It wasn't until nearly midnight that her phone buzzed. I'll do it. Meet me at the Shilla Hotel. Saturday, 2 p.m. Don't be late. No greeting, no explanation. Just a command. Josephine read it 3 times, her heart hammering. He'd said yes. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt like she'd just made a deal with the devil and forgotten to read the fine print. The Shilla Hotel was the kind of place that made Josephine feel like an imposter just walking through the doors. All marble and gold leaf and staff, who looked like they were trained to spot people who didn't belong. She'd dressed carefully. A simple black dress, elegant, but understated. Her natural curls pulled back into a low bun. Minimal jewelry. She wanted to look put together, not like she was trying too hard. Taeyun was already there, waiting in a private lounge that overlooked the gardens. He stood when she entered, a courtesy that felt more automatic than genuine. In daylight, he was even more devastating. The sharp planes of his face, the way his suit fit like it had been designed specifically for his body, the casual way he commanded space, like gravity bent to accommodate him. Miss Clark, he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. Mr. Kang. She sat, smoothing her dress over her knees. Thank you for agreeing to this. I haven't agreed yet. I wanted to see you again first. Why? To make sure you're serious, that you understand what you're asking. Josephine met his gaze. I'm asking you to pretend to be my date for one evening, to stand next to me and make my ex-fiancé think I've moved on. That's all. That's not all. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You're asking me to lie to powerful people, people I may need to do business with someday. You're asking me to make you look like you belong in a world that clearly doesn't want you. And you're asking me to do it convincingly enough that no one questions it. Each word was a small cut, precise and painful. So you're saying no. I'm saying this needs to be transactional, clear. You get your night of vindication. I get something in return. Josephine's chest tightened. What do you want? There's a gala next month. Tech industry. Investors. CEOs, government officials. I need a date. Someone cultured. Someone who can talk about art and history and hold her own in a room full of sharks. You want me to be your date in exchange for being mine? Yes. She should have been offended, should have walked out, but instead, she felt something like respect. He wasn't pretending this was charity, wasn't pretending he was doing her a favor out of the goodness of his heart. It was a deal, clean and honest. One event, Josephine said. Your gala. That's it. Agreed. He extended his hand. She shook it, his grip firm and cool. We'll need to make this believable, Tae-yun said, releasing her hand. Which means we need a story. How we met. How long we've been together. What I do that makes you look at me the way you'll need to look at me. Josephine's pulse skipped. The way I'll need to look at you? Like you're in love with me, Miss Clark. Or at least infatuated enough that no one questions why you're with me instead of still crying over him. Heat crept up her neck. Right. Of course. We met at a gallery opening 6 months ago. You were giving a talk on contemporary African art. I was there investing in an emerging artist. We started talking. I asked you to dinner. It progressed from there. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was reciting a grocery list instead of inventing an entire relationship. That works, Josephine said. Good. I'll have my assistant send you the details for the wedding. Car service will pick you up. We'll arrive together. I can drive myself. Not if we're selling this. Couples arrive together. Fine. He stood, buttoning his jacket. One more thing. What are you wearing? Excuse me? To the wedding. What are you wearing? Josephine bristled. I haven't decided yet. Decide soon. It matters. I'm aware of how to dress for a formal event, Mr. Kang. His gaze raked over her, analytical and impersonal. I'm sure you are. But this isn't just a formal event. This is theater. And you're the lead actress. Choose accordingly. Then he walked out, leaving Josephine alone with her indignation and the sinking feeling that she'd just signed up for something far more complicated than a fake date. The next 10 days were a blur of work and wedding anxiety. Josephine threw herself into finding the perfect dress, something that would make her feel powerful and untouchable. She found it in a boutique in Gangnam, tucked between racks of safe, forgettable elegance. Emerald green, silk that moved like water, a neckline that plunged just enough to be bold without crossing into desperate. It fit her like it had been waiting for her body specifically. She bought it without checking the price. The morning of the wedding, Josephine stood in front of her mirror and barely recognized herself. Her natural curls fell in thick, glossy spirals around her shoulders, free and unapologetic. The dress turned her into someone else, someone who didn't flinch, someone who belonged. The car arrived at exactly 1 o'clock. Josephine's hands shook as she locked her apartment. This was it. No turning back. The drive to Tae-yun's building took 20 minutes. When the car pulled up to the sleek high-rise in Gangnam, her stomach twisted into knots. He was waiting in the lobby, and when he saw her, he went completely still. Tae-yun had seen beautiful women before, had dated models and heiresses and actresses who made their living being looked at. But when Josephine stepped out of the elevator in that green dress, her curls wild and perfect around her face, something in his carefully controlled world shifted. She was stunning. Not in the polished, manufactured way he was used to. in a raw, unapologetic way that made it hard to remember this was supposed to be business. "Mr. Kang," she said, stopping in front of him. He couldn't speak for a moment, just stared. "Is something wrong?" she asked, a hint of uncertainty creeping into her voice. "No," he managed. "You look appropriate." Appropriate. The word was a lie, and they both knew it. Her mouth curved into the smallest smile. "You don't look so bad yourself." He was in charcoal gray, tailored within an inch of its life. But next to her, he felt like a shadow. Necessary, but unremarkable. "The car's waiting," he said, offering his arm. She took it, her hand light against his sleeve. And as they walked out into the afternoon sun, Tae-yoon realized he'd made a terrible miscalculation. This was supposed to be simple. Josephine Clark was anything but simple. She was complicated and brilliant and terrifying in ways he hadn't anticipated. And as they drove toward Busan, and the reckoning waiting there, Tae-yoon realized he'd just agreed to something that might change everything. "So, dear besties, can we just take a moment here? Our girl Josephine just convinced a billionaire stranger to be her fake boyfriend, and they're heading straight into her worst nightmare. The audacity. But here's the thing. This is just the beginning. Tae-yoon thinks he's just playing a role, but oh, honey, he has no idea what's coming. If you're invested in seeing how this fake relationship crashes into some very real feelings, smash that like button and subscribe. Because the tension, the drama, the way Tae-yoon is about to absolutely wreck Min-jae's whole day, you're going to want to see this. All right, besties, back to the story. Because we're pulling up to the hotel, and things are about to get spicy. The drive to Busan should have taken 4 hours. It felt like 4 minutes and 4 years all at once. Tae-yoon sat across from her in the back of the sleek black sedan, his attention fixed on his phone, scrolling through what looked like financial reports. He hadn't said more than 3 words since they'd left Seoul. The silence stretched between them like a live wire, humming with tension neither of them acknowledged. Josephine watched the city blur into countryside, trying to ignore the way her stomach twisted tighter with every passing kilometer. She was doing this, actually doing this, walking back into the place that had chewed her up and spit her out, armed with nothing but a beautiful dress and a man who looked at her like she was a quarterly earnings report. "Tell me about him," Tae-yoon said suddenly, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. She turned from the window. "What?" "Your ex, Min-jae. Tell me about him." He set his phone down, giving her his full attention. "If we're going to convince people we're together, I need to know who I'm protecting you from." Protecting. The word did something strange to her chest. "He's not dangerous," Josephine said carefully. "Just weak. Weak men can be the most dangerous kind." She studied him, this stranger who'd agreed to walk into her nightmare. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am." He shifted, crossing one ankle over his knee. "My last relationship ended because she chose her family's approval over me. Said I was too rough around the edges, too provincial, not the kind of man she could bring home." Josephine felt something crack open inside her. "That's almost exactly what happened to me. I know. That's why I said yes." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Before Josephine could respond, Tae-yoon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Problem?" she asked. "Business. Nothing that can't wait." He silenced the phone and tucked it away. Back to Min Jae. What else should I know? Josephine took a breath. He's charming, smart, good at making people feel like they're the only person in the room. His mother is the real power in that family. She makes the decisions. And she decided 3 years ago that I wasn't good enough. Because you're black. It wasn't a question. Josephine appreciated that he didn't dance around it. Because I'm black. Because I'm American. Because my family doesn't own half of Busan. Take your pick. She looked down at her hands. She was very polite about it. Always smiled. Always made it seem like she was trying to help me fit in. Little corrections. Little comments about my Korean, my manners, the way I dressed. Death by 1,000 cuts. Taeyoon's expression darkened. And Min Jae let her. Min Jae loved me. I really believe that. But he loved his family's approval more. She met Taeyoon's eyes. When it came down to choosing, he didn't choose me. Then he's a fool. The words were simple, matter of fact. But they settled over Josephine like a blanket. She wanted to believe them. What about you? She asked, desperate to shift the focus. The woman who wasn't good enough for her family. What happened? She married someone else. Someone with the right background. The right connections. Last I heard, she's miserable. But at least her parents are happy. Do you still love her? Taeyoon was quiet for a long moment. No, but I'm still angry. At her. At myself for not being enough. At a system that measures worth in bloodlines and bank accounts. Josephine understood that anger, had carried it like a stone in her chest for 3 years. We're quite a pair, she said softly. Yes, we are. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. The strange intimacy of shared wounds. Outside, the landscape shifted. They were getting close to the coast. Josephine could smell the ocean through the vents. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Can't wait to meet him. Send pictures. Love you, baby. Josephine's throat tightened. She'd told her mother about Taeyoon. Kept it vague. Let her believe this was real. The lie had been easier than explaining the truth. Nervous? Taeyoon asked, watching her. Terrified. Good. Use it. Fear makes you sharp. Is that your business strategy? Among other things. The hotel appeared on the horizon, all white stone and manicured gardens overlooking the sea. The Grand Meridian. Josephine's stomach lurched. This was it. The car pulled up to the entrance. Valets in crisp uniforms rushed forward. Taeyoon stepped out first, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease, then extended his hand to help her out. The moment her heels touched the pavement, she felt eyes turn their way. Guests milling near the entrance. Hotel staff. All watching. Taeyoon's hand settled at the small of her back, possessive and grounding. Breathe, he murmured against her ear. You look like a queen. Act like one. Then they walked inside. The lobby was chaos wrapped in elegance. Guests everywhere, dressed in their finest, air buzzing with excitement and expensive perfume. Josephine recognized faces from 3 years ago. Friends of Min Jae's family. People who'd watched her relationship crumble and probably gossiped about it over wine. She felt their stares like pinpricks. But then Taeyoon's hand tightened at her back, steady and sure, and she remembered why she was here. Josephine? The voice came from behind them. Familiar. Warm. Josephine turned and found herself face to face with Sua, one of the few people from Min-jae's circle who'd actually been kind to her. Su-ah, oh my God. Josephine pulled her into a hug, genuinely happy to see her. Su-ah pulled back, beaming. You look incredible. I mean, wow. That dress. Then her eyes slid to Tae-yun, and her expression shifted to open curiosity. And who is this? Josephine felt Tae-yun step closer, his presence at her shoulder like a wall of controlled power. This is Kang Tae-yun. My. She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. My boyfriend. The word felt foreign on her tongue. Strange, but not entirely wrong. Tae-yun extended his hand, his smile polite and distant. Pleasure. Su-ah shook it, clearly impressed. The pleasure is mine. Josephine, you didn't tell me you were seeing someone. It's still pretty new, Josephine said, the lie coming easier than it should. 6 months. 6 months isn't that new. Su-ah's eyes sparkled with mischief. You've been holding out on me. We need to catch up properly. Are you staying for the reception? Of course. Good. I want to hear everything. Su-ah squeezed Josephine's hand, then disappeared into the crowd, leaving them alone again. Tae-yun leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. You're a natural liar. I'm a good actress when I need to be. I'm starting to see that. They made their way through the lobby toward the gardens where the ceremony would take place. With each step, Josephine felt the weight of history pressing down on her. This hotel, this city, these people, see, all of it dragged her back to who she'd been 3 years ago. Smaller, desperate to fit in, willing to sand down her edges to make room for someone else's comfort. Not anymore. The gardens were breathtaking, white chairs arranged in perfect rows, an aisle lined with roses, and at the end, beneath a flower-draped arch, stood Min-jae. Josephine's breath caught. He looked the same, handsome in his tuxedo, hair perfectly styled, that easy smile that had once made her believe in forevers. He was talking to his groomsmen, laughing at something, completely at ease, like she'd never existed. Tae-yun must have felt her falter, because his hand moved from her back to her waist, pulling her closer. Look at me, he commanded softly. She did. His dark eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. He doesn't get to see you break. Understand? Josephine nodded, her throat too tight for words. Good. Now smile. She did. And for the cameras, for the guests, for Min-jae, if he happened to look their way, it probably looked real. They found their seats near the middle, close enough to be seen, far enough to avoid the family section. As they sat, Tae-yun's thigh pressed against hers, solid and grounding. You're doing well, he murmured. I haven't done anything yet. You showed up. That's half the battle. Music started. The processional. Everyone stood. Josephine watched as the wedding party filed down the aisle. Bridesmaids in blush pink, groomsmen in sharp black, all of them beautiful and perfect, and exactly the kind of people Min-jae's mother would approve of. Then came the bride. Park Yuna was stunning, petite and delicate, in a dress that probably cost more than Josephine's car. Her face was serene, composed, the picture of bridal perfection. She floated down the aisle like she'd been born for this moment. Josephine felt something ugly twist in her stomach. Not jealousy exactly. Something more complicated. The bitter ache of replacement. Taeyun's hand found hers beneath, the cover of her clutch. He didn't say anything, just laced his fingers through hers and held on. The ceremony began. Josephine barely heard the vows. She was too focused on breathing, on not letting the memories drown her, on ignoring the way Minji looked at Yuna like she was everything he'd ever wanted. He'd never looked at Josephine like that. Halfway through, she felt eyes on her. She glanced to the left and found Minjae's mother staring directly at her, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Kim, elegant and terrifying in cream silk, the woman who'd perfected the art of the backhanded compliment, who'd made Josephine feel like a guest in her own relationship. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, neither looked away. Then Mrs. Kim's gaze slid to Taeyun. Her eyebrows rose, just slightly. Surprise. Maybe recognition. Taeyun didn't react. Just sat there, radiating the kind of quiet power that couldn't be bought or faked. Mrs. Kim looked away first. Josephine felt a dark thrill of satisfaction. The ceremony ended with applause and the kiss that made it official. Minja and Yuna, husband and wife. The crowd surged to its feet, cheering, and Josephine forced herself to clap along with them. She'd survived the ceremony. Now came the hard part. The reception. Cocktail hour was held on a terrace overlooking the ocean. String lights twinkled overhead. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The guests mingled, laughing and congratulating each other, as if they'd all played a part in bringing this union to life. Josephine accepted a glass of champagne she didn't want, and tried to blend into the background. Taeyun had other ideas. He guided her through the crowd, with the confidence of someone who'd spent his life navigating rooms full of sharks. People parted for him instinctively. Conversations paused when he approached. He was magnetic without trying, and Josephine found herself watching him with growing fascination. This wasn't an act. This was who he was, a man who commanded space simply by existing in it. "You're staring," he said without looking at her. "You're different here." "How so?" "More yourself." That earned her a glance, almost a smile. "I'm always myself, Miss Clark." "Josephine, if we're dating, you should probably use my first name." "Josephine." He said it slowly, like he was tasting it again, deciding if he liked the flavor. "Better." "Better." A waiter passed with a tray of canapés. Taeyun snagged two, handing one to Josephine. "Eat," he ordered. "You haven't had anything since breakfast." "How do you know that?" "You're shaking. It's not just nerves." He was right. She was running on adrenaline and spite, and neither made for good fuel. She ate. The food was delicious and completely tasteless. "Josephine Clark!" The voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. Josephine turned, her stomach dropping. Mrs. Kim stood 3 feet away, resplendent in her cream silk and pearls, her smile as sharp as broken glass. "Mrs. Kim," Josephine said, forcing warmth into her voice. "Congratulations. The ceremony was beautiful." "Thank you. I'm so glad you could make it." Mrs. Kim's eyes slid to Taeyun, curiosity glinting in their depths. "And you've brought a guest." Taeyun stepped forward, extending his hand with perfect, calculated courtesy. "Kang Taeyun. A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Kim." She took his hand, her expression shifting subtly. "Kang Taeyun, the tech entrepreneur. You're familiar with my work. I make it my business to know the players in Seoul's business community. You've built quite an empire for someone so young." "I've been fortunate," Modest. How refreshing. Mrs. Kim turned her attention back to Josephine, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. I had no idea you were seeing someone, Josephine. You've kept this very quiet. We prefer to keep our private life private, Josephine said smoothly. How long have you been together? 6 months. Mrs. Kim's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. 6 months. How lovely. And how did you two meet? Tae-yun's hand found the small of Josephine's back again, a gesture so natural it almost looked real. A gallery opening, he said. Josephine was giving a talk on contemporary African art. I was immediately captivated. By the art or by Josephine? Both. Mrs. Kim's gaze sharpened. She was testing them, looking for cracks. Josephine always did have such interesting perspectives, Mrs. Kim said delicately. I'm glad she's found someone who appreciates them. The insult was wrapped in silk, but it landed like a fist. Before Josephine could respond, Tae-yun's hand tightened at her back. Josephine's brilliance is one of the many reasons I fell for her, he said, his voice mild, but edged with steel. She sees the world in ways most people can't. It's extraordinary. Mrs. Kim blinked, clearly not expecting to be contradicted. How sweet, she said, her smile brittle. Well, I should go greet the other guests. Enjoy the reception. She glided away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and barely concealed hostility. Josephine released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That woman is a viper, Tae-yun said quietly. Yeah, and I almost married into her family. Bullet dodged. Despite everything, Josephine laughed. It bubbled up unexpected and genuine, cutting through the tension like light through fog. Tae-yun looked at her, something unguarded flickering across his face. There she is. Who? The woman who walked into that bar and demanded I help her burn her ex's world down. His eyes held hers. I was starting to think she'd disappeared. Josephine's pulse kicked up. The way he was looking at her felt dangerous, like standing too close to the edge of something vast and unknown. I'm still here, she said softly. Good. Don't go anywhere. The moment stretched, charged and electric. Then, someone clinked a glass, calling everyone to dinner, and the spell broke. The reception hall was a masterpiece of understated luxury. Round tables draped in ivory linens, centerpieces of white roses and trailing greenery, crystal chandeliers casting everything in warm, flattering light. Josephine and Tae-yun found their assigned table near the back, far from the head table where Min-jae and Yuna sat like royalty, far from the family, exactly where she'd expected to be placed, out of sight, out of mind. Their table mates were pleasant enough, a couple from Yuna's side who made polite small talk, an older gentleman who worked with Min-jae's father, a young woman who spent most of dinner on her phone. Tae-yun played his role perfectly, attentive but not smothering. He poured Josephine's water before she had to ask, laughed at her jokes, touched her hand when she spoke, small gestures that sold the illusion. And it was an illusion. Josephine had to keep reminding herself of that. Dinner was served. Courses that were beautiful and complicated. Josephine pushed food around her plate, too aware of Tae-yun beside her, the heat of his body, the way his knee occasionally brushed hers under the table. You need to eat more than that, he murmured, leaning close enough that his breath stirred her hair. I'm not hungry. You're running on fumes. Eat. It should have annoyed her, his bossiness. Instead, it felt like someone was paying attention, actually caring whether she took care of herself. She ate. Speeches began. Min-jae's father, eloquent and proud. Yuna's mother, gracious and warm. The best man, funny and slightly drunk. Each toast painted a picture of perfect love. Perfect families coming together in perfect union. Josephine felt like she was watching it all through glass. Then Min-jae stood to speak. The room quieted. He looked out over the guests, his smile easy and charming. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began. "Marriage is about partnership, about finding the person who completes you, who makes you better than you could ever be alone." His eyes swept the room and landed for just a heartbeat on Josephine. Her breath stopped. "I'm the luckiest man alive," Min-jae continued, looking back at Yuna. "Because I found that person, my partner, my equal, the woman who fits perfectly into my life and my family." The words were a knife, perfectly aimed. Under the table, Tae-yun's hand found Josephine's thigh. Not sexual. Grounding. A silent reminder that she wasn't alone. She placed her hand over his and held on. The speeches ended. Music started. The bride and groom took the floor for their first dance, moving together with practiced grace. Josephine watched, waiting to feel something. Heartbreak. Jealousy. Regret. Instead, she felt nothing. Just a distant sadness for the girl she'd been. The one who'd believed love was enough. "Dance with me," Tae-yun said. She turned to him. "What?" "Dance with me. Everyone's watching. Let's give them something to see." He stood, offering his hand. Josephine took it. The dance floor was already crowded with couples swaying to something slow and romantic. Tae-yun led her to the center, his hand sliding around her waist, pulling her close enough that propriety blurred into something more intimate. "I don't know if I can do this," Josephine whispered. "Yes, you can. Just follow me." He moved with the kind of effortless grace that suggested expensive lessons or natural talent. Josephine let him lead, her hand on his shoulder, hyper-aware of everywhere their bodies touched. "You're thinking too hard," he said. "I'm trying not to step on your feet." "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let you." His confidence was maddening and comforting all at once. They swayed together, and Josephine felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. This wasn't so bad. She could pretend. She was good at pretending. "He's watching," Tae-yun said quietly. "What?" "Your ex. He's been watching you since we stepped onto the floor." Josephine's instinct was to look, but Tae-yun's hand tightened at her waist. "Don't look at him. Look at me." She did. His face was closer than she'd realized, his dark eyes intense and unreadable. "Better," he murmured. "Now smile." "I don't feel like smiling." "Then laugh." "At what?" "At the fact that he's standing next to his perfect approved wife, and he can't stop looking at you." A surprised laugh escaped her, genuine and bright. Tae-yun's expression softened. "There it is." "You're kind of terrible," Josephine said, but she was still smiling. "I've been called worse." The song changed, something slightly faster, but Tae-yun didn't let her go. If anything, he pulled her closer, his hand splayed across her lower back, his thumb brushing the bare skin exposed by her dress. Josephine's breath hitched. This was supposed to be fake. A performance. but the way he was looking at her didn't feel like acting. It felt real, dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff and wanting to jump. "Tae-yoon," she started, not sure what she was going to say. His eyes dropped to her mouth, just for a second, but it was enough to make her pulse race. Then someone bumped into them, breaking the moment. "Sorry," a drunk groomsman stumbled past, laughing. Tae-yoon steadied Josephine, his jaw tight. "We should get some air." "Okay." He led her off the dance floor, his hand never leaving hers. They slipped through the crowd, past tables and conversations, out onto a quieter terrace that overlooked the ocean. The night air was cool and salt-tinged. Music drifted out from the reception, muffled and distant. Josephine leaned against the railing, breathing deep, trying to calm her racing heart. Tae-yoon stood beside her, close, but not touching. "Thank you," Josephine said after a moment. "For tonight. For all of this. You don't have to thank me. I do. You didn't have to be this convincing, this kind." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "You want to know the truth? Always. This stopped being just a favor about 3 days ago." Josephine's heart stopped. "What?" "I've been thinking about you. More than I should. More than makes sense for a business arrangement." He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Tell me I'm alone in this." She should lie, should protect herself, should remember that this was all pretend. But she couldn't. "You're not alone," she whispered. The air between them ignited. Tae-yoon's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "The worst. We barely know each other. I know. And when this is over, you might regret it." "Maybe." His eyes burned into hers. "Tell me to stop." Josephine couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze, the dangerous pull between them. "Don't stop," she breathed. And then he kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both testing the waters of something that could drown them. Then Tae-yoon's other hand found her waist, pulling her closer, and gentle became something else entirely. Josephine's hands slid up his chest, feeling the rapid thud of his heartbeat beneath expensive fabric. He kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been holding his breath for years. Like this moment mattered more than the pretense that brought them here. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tae-yoon rested his forehead against hers. "That wasn't part of the plan," he said, his voice rough. "No, it wasn't." "Should we talk about it?" Josephine's laugh was shaky. "Probably, but not right now." "When?" "After. When this is over and we can think clearly." He nodded, stepping back reluctantly. The loss of his warmth felt like punishment. They stood there in charged silence, the ocean breeze cooling their heated skin, both trying to process what had just shifted between them. "We should go back inside," Josephine said finally. "People will notice we're gone." "Let them." "Tae-yoon." He sighed, but offered his arm. "As you wish." They walked back into the reception together, and if anyone noticed the flush in Josephine's cheeks or the slightly disheveled state of Tae-yoon's hair, they were too polite to mention it. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of music and champagne and stolen glances. Josephine caught Min-jae watching her twice more, his expression unreadable. She didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, He was the last person on her mind. All she could think about was the man beside her, the way his hand settled naturally at her back, the way he listened when she spoke, like her words actually mattered, the way he'd kissed her like she was worth breaking rules for. Near midnight, the bride and groom made their exit in a shower of sparklers and rose petals. Guests began filtering out, calling for cars, saying goodbyes. Josephine and Taeyun were among the last to leave. As they walked through the hotel lobby, Josephine heard someone call her name. She turned to find Min-jae standing near the elevators, alone, still in his tuxedo but with his bow tie undone, looking tired beneath the polish. Her stomach twisted. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Just for a minute." Josephine felt Taeyun tense beside her. She touched his arm lightly. "It's okay. I'll be right back." "I'll wait in the car," Taeyun said, his eyes never leaving Min-jae. It wasn't a threat exactly, more like a promise. Min-jae waited until Taeyun was gone before speaking. "You look happy," he said quietly. "I am." "Is it serious? With him?" Josephine considered lying, keeping up the charade, but suddenly it felt exhausting. "I don't know yet, but it could be." Min-jae nodded, looking down at his hands. "I'm glad. You deserve that." "Do I? I seem to remember you saying I'd never quite fit into this world." He flinched. "I was cruel and wrong, and I've regretted it every day since." "Then why did you invite me? To your wedding? Why torture us both?" "Because I needed to see you one last time, to see if I'd made the right choice." He looked up, his eyes sad. "I did. Not because Yuna is better than you, but because I was never brave enough to be what you needed. You needed someone who would fight for you, who wouldn't care what anyone thought." He glanced toward the entrance where Taeyun waited. "Looks like you found him." Josephine's throat tightened. She'd waited 3 years to hear something like this. An admission that she hadn't been the problem, that his cowardice, not her inadequacy, had broken them. Now that she had it, it felt hollow. "I hope you're happy, Min-jae. I really do. I hope you are too, with Kang Taeyun, or whoever comes next. You deserve the world, Josephine. I'm sorry I was too weak to give it to you." He walked, away then, back toward his wedding, his chosen life, leaving Josephine alone with 3 years of anger that suddenly had nowhere to go. She found Taeyun exactly where he said he'd be, leaning against the car, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when she approached. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I think I am." The drive back to Seoul was quieter than the drive down. Josephine watched the darkness blur past her window, processing everything. The wedding, the confrontation with Mrs. Kim, Min-jae's sad confession, the kiss. Always back to the kiss. "What are you thinking?" Taeyun asked, his voice cutting through the silence. "That today was nothing like I expected. Better or worse? Different." She turned to look at him. "Thank you for being there, for being exactly what I needed." "It wasn't all altruistic. I enjoyed parts of it very much." Heat crept up her neck. "The dancing?" "Among other things." The air between them charged again, that same electric pull. "Taeyun, about what happened on the terrace. We don't have to talk about it now. But we do, because I need to know if it was real or if you were just playing a part." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "It was real, Josephine. Too real. And that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I don't do this. I don't catch feelings for women I barely know. I don't break my own rules. But with you, all I want to do is break every rule I've ever made." Josephine's heart hammered against her ribs. What if I'm not ready? What if I'm still too broken from Minjae? Then we take it slow. We figure it out together. No pressure. No expectations. He squeezed her hand. But I'm asking you to give this a chance. Give us a chance. She should say no. Should protect her heart. Should remember that she'd just survived one failed relationship, and walking into another was madness. But looking at him, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, all she wanted to say was yes. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try." His smile was small, but genuine. "Yeah? Yeah." They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence, hands still linked, both of them wondering what they'd just started. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream Josephine was afraid to wake from. Tae-yun was true to his word. He didn't push, didn't demand, just showed up, consistently and genuinely, in ways that made her believe this could actually work. He took her to dinner at a tiny restaurant in Itaewon that served the best jigai she'd ever tasted. They spent an entire Sunday at a contemporary art museum, arguing good-naturedly about installation pieces and abstract expressionism. He came to one of her gallery talks and sat in the back row, watching her with an intensity that made her forget her notes twice. They talked about everything. His childhood in Daegu, growing up poor but ambitious. Her experience as a black woman in Korea. Navigating a culture that fascinated and frustrated her in equal measure. Their shared wounds from relationships that had taught them they weren't enough. Slowly, carefully, they built something real. But Josephine still felt the fear lurking at the edges. The voice that whispered she was setting herself up for heartbreak. That men like Tae-yun didn't end up with women like her. That this was just another version of the story that had already broken her once. She tried to ignore it. 3 weeks after the wedding, Josephine's phone rang while she was reviewing exhibition proposals. Her mother. "Hey, Mama," she answered, tucking the phone against her shoulder. "Baby, I need details. You've been so secretive about this man. When do I get to meet him?" Josephine's stomach dropped. She'd been so caught up in the reality of what was happening with Tae-yun that she'd forgotten her mother still thought this had started 6 months ago. "It's complicated, Mama." "Complicated how? You're dating him, aren't you?" "Yes, but it's new. Really new. I thought you said 6 months." "I lied." The admission spilled out before Josephine could stop it. "We met the day before Minjae's wedding. He agreed to be my fake date, and then it became real. And now, I don't know what we are, but I think I might be falling for him, and I'm terrified." Silence on the other end. "Mama?" "Baby girl, take a breath." Josephine did. "Now tell me everything." So she did. The whole story. The bar, the deal, the wedding, the kiss. Her mother listened without interrupting, which was how Josephine knew she was really worried. "Do you trust him?" her mother asked when she finished. "I think so. Maybe. I don't know. Does he make you happy?" "Yes." "Does he treat you with respect? Make you feel valued?" "Yes. God, yes. He makes me feel like I'm the most interesting person in the world." "Then what's the problem? What if it doesn't last? What if I'm just setting myself up to get hurt again?" Her mother's sigh was fond and exasperated. "Baby, that's the risk of loving anyone. But you can't protect your heart by never using it. You tried that after Minji, and look where it got you. Lonely and scared. Josephine's eyes burned. I don't want to be weak again. Choosing to love isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. And if he hurts you, you'll survive. But if you walk away because you're afraid, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. The words settled over Josephine like truth. When did you get so wise? She asked, her voice thick. I've always been wise. You just don't listen. Her mother's voice softened. Give him a chance, baby. Give yourself a chance. You deserve this. After they hung up, Josephine sat with her mother's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe the only way forward was to stop protecting herself and start living. She picked up her phone and texted Taeyun. Dinner tonight? My place. I'll cook. His response came almost immediately. I'll bring wine. See you at 7. Taeyun arrived exactly at 7, holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, and looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a simple sweater. Josephine had spent the afternoon cooking, channeling her nervous energy into her grandmother's recipe for braised short ribs and her own attempt at Korean banchan. The results were imperfect, but edible. It smells incredible, Taeyun said, stepping inside and immediately making her small apartment feel smaller. It's experimental. No guarantees. I'm adventurous. They ate at her tiny kitchen table, knees bumping underneath, conversation flowing easily. Taeyun praised her cooking with genuine enthusiasm, and Josephine found herself relaxing, the familiar rhythm of sharing a meal easing her anxiety. After dinner, they moved to the couch with wine. Rain had started outside, pattering against the windows, cocooning them in warmth and intimacy. I need to tell you something, Josephine said, curling her legs beneath her. Taeyun set down his wine, giving her his full attention. I'm listening. I'm scared. Of this, of us, of how much I already care about you. He reached over and took her hand. I'm scared too. You don't seem like someone who gets scared. I hide it better, but trust me, I'm terrified. I haven't let anyone this close in years. The idea of you having the power to hurt me keeps me up at night. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you either, but we might. People do. The question is whether we think it's worth the risk. Josephine looked at their joined hands. His thumb was tracing slow circles on her palm, a gesture so gentle it made her chest ache. My mother told me that choosing to love is the bravest thing you can do, she said quietly. Your mother sounds smart. She is. Josephine met his eyes. I want to be brave, Taeyun. With you. I want to see where this goes without holding back. Something in his expression cracked open. Relief and vulnerability and hope all tangled together. I want that too, he said. More than I've wanted anything in a long time. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly, sweetly, a promise instead of a performance. When they broke apart, Taeyun pulled her against his chest, and Josephine let herself sink into the embrace. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, grounding and real. We're really doing this, she murmured. We're really doing this. Outside, the rain intensified, but inside, Josephine felt safer than she had in years. The next 3 months unfolded like the best kind of story, the kind where the happy parts outweighed the hard parts, where love grew slowly, deliberately, rooted in friendship and genuine respect. Taeyun met her friends, charming them effortlessly, while still managing to make Josephine feel like the most important person in the room. She met his business partners, holding her own in conversations about markets and investments, proving she belonged in his world. Not because she changed herself, but because she was brilliant exactly as she was. They had their first fight over something stupid, a miscommunication about dinner plans that escalated because they were both tired and scared of messing this up. But instead of walking away, they talked it through, apologized, learned each other's triggers and soft spots. They celebrated Josephine's gallery opening, Tae-yoon buying 3 pieces and insisting on displaying them in his office where everyone could see them. She went to his company's annual gala, the event he'd originally wanted her for, and realized she didn't need to pretend anymore. She actually wanted to be there. With him. Her mother flew to Seoul in November and spent a week interrogating Tae-yoon over meals and museum visits. By the end, she pulled Josephine aside and said simply, "He's good for you, baby. Don't let him. Go." Josephine didn't plan to. Winter came, blanketing Seoul in snow and possibility. Tae-yoon took her ice skating at an outdoor rink, laughing when she nearly took them both down 3 times. They drank hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps and watched the city lights glitter like promises. One evening in December, wrapped in blankets on his couch, Tae-yoon said, "I want you to meet my family." Josephine's heart skipped. "In Daegu?" "Yes. They've been asking about you. My mother especially. She doesn't believe I'm actually dating someone." "When?" "Next weekend. We could make a trip of it. Stay a few days." Josephine studied his face, looking for doubt. Finding none. "Okay, let's do it." The trip to Daegu was nerve-wracking and wonderful. Tae-yoon's mother was warm and welcoming in a way that made Josephine's eyes sting. His father was quiet but kind, asking thoughtful questions about her work and actually listening to the answers. They treated her like she belonged, not like a curiosity or a project, just like someone their son cared about, and therefore they cared about too. On their last night, Tae-yoon's mother pulled Josephine aside while they were washing dishes. "He's different with you," she said in careful English. "Lighter. Happy. I haven't seen him like this since he was a boy." "He makes me happy too," Josephine said honestly. "Good. Then you hold on to each other. Don't let the world tell you it's too hard or too complicated. Love is always worth fighting for." Josephine hugged her, overwhelmed by the acceptance she'd never expected to find. On the train back to Seoul, Josephine rested her head on Tae-yoon's shoulder, feeling something settle deep in her chest. This was real. This was lasting. This was everything she'd stopped believing she deserved. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and a surprise. Josephine came home from work to find Tae-yoon waiting outside her apartment, holding an envelope. "What's this?" she asked, unlocking the door. "Open it." Inside were 2 tickets. To Busan, for a weekend in May. Her stomach dropped. "Tae-yoon, I don't want to go back there." "I know, but I have a reason. Trust me." She looked at him, this man who'd walked into her life as a stranger and become her safest place. Always. The weekend came. They took the train to Busan, the same route they'd traveled almost a year ago. But everything was different now. They checked into a hotel near the beach, and Tae-yoon was quieter than usual. Nervous. "What's going on?" Josephine asked as they walked along the shore that evening, waves lapping at their feet. "There's somewhere I want to take you. Tomorrow." Where? It's a surprise. Wear something nice. The next day, dressed in a sundress the color of the sky, Josephine followed Taeyun to a car. They drove through the city, past familiar landmarks, until they pulled up to a venue she recognized with a jolt. The Grand Meridian Hotel. Taeyun, what are we doing? Here? He took her hand, his expression soft. Reclaiming it. Come on. He led her through the lobby, past the reception hall, out to the gardens where Min-jae's wedding had been held a year ago. But now those gardens were decorated differently. White chairs arranged in rows, an arch covered in flowers, soft music playing. Josephine's heart stopped. Standing near the arch were both their families. Her mother, his parents, her closest friends, his business partners turned friends. Taeyun, she whispered, turning to him. He was already on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Josephine Clark, a year ago you walked into my life and asked me to be your fake date to the worst night of your life. I said yes because something about you felt familiar, like recognizing someone I'd been waiting for without knowing it. His voice was steady, despite the emotion in his eyes. You've made me braver, kinder, better. You've shown me that love doesn't have to hurt, that the right person doesn't make you smaller. They help you grow. Tears streamed down Josephine's face. I want to spend my life making you feel valued and seen and loved. I want to build a home with you, a family, a future that's ours and no one else's. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the sunlight. Will you marry me? Will you let me be your real date to every important moment for the rest of our lives? Josephine couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, could only nod frantically, laughing and crying all at once. Yes, yes, of course, yes. Taeyun slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like coming home. Their families erupted in cheers and applause. When they broke apart, Josephine looked around at the gardens, at the venue that had once represented her biggest heartbreak, now transformed into the beginning of her greatest joy. You brought me back here, she said, wonder in her voice. I wanted to replace the bad memory with a better one. This place doesn't get to mean pain anymore. Now it means us. Our beginning. Josephine kissed him again, pouring everything she felt into it. They spent the rest of the day celebrating with the people they loved. Her mother hugged Taeyun and whispered something that made him laugh. His parents welcomed Josephine officially into the family, with warm embraces. As the sun set over Busan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Josephine and Taeyun stood together, looking out at the ocean. I can't believe you did all this, she said, leaning into him. You're worth it. You've always been worth it. Even when I was a stranger in a bar, making insane requests? Especially then. You were the bravest person I'd ever met, asking for what you needed, refusing to hide. He turned her to face him. You taught me how to be brave, too. We're going to do this right, aren't we? Build something real. The most real thing I've ever known. 6 months later, they returned to Busan again. This time for their own wedding. They'd chosen to blend traditions, Korean and American, family customs, and new rituals they created together. Josephine wore a dress that made her feel like herself, powerful and beautiful, and unapologetically present. Taeyun wore a traditional hanbok for the ceremony, his eyes never leaving her as she walked down the aisle. Her mother cried. His parents beamed. Their friends cheered. When they exchanged vows, Josephine spoke from her heart. You saw me when I felt invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless. You loved me when I'd forgotten how to love myself. I promise to be your partner in everything, to build you up the way you've built me up, to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives. Taeyun's vows were simple and devastating. I was waiting for you without knowing it, and now that I've found you, I'm never letting go. You're my home, Josephine, today and always. They kissed as husband and wife, and the gardens erupted in celebration. The reception was everything: joy and laughter and dancing under string lights, speeches that made them cry and toasts that made them laugh. At one point, Josephine caught Taeyun watching her from across the room, his expression so full of love it took her breath away. Late in the evening, they slipped away to the same terrace where they'd first kissed a year ago. How are you feeling, Mrs. Kang? Taeyun asked, pulling her close. Like the luckiest woman alive. That makes two of us. Well, luckiest man. Josephine laughed, the sound bright and free. Remember when I asked you to be my date to my ex's wedding? Best decision you ever made. Second best. Saying yes to you was the best. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. Soft and sweet and full of promise. Thank you, he whispered, for taking a chance on me. Thank you for saying yes. They stood there together, overlooking the ocean, the sounds of their celebration drifting out to them. Two people who'd been broken by love and had chosen to be brave enough to try again. And as the stars came out over Busan, Josephine realized something profound. The invitation that had once felt like a threat had actually been a gift. It had led her here, to this man, to this life, to a love that didn't demand she be smaller, but celebrated everything she was. She'd gone to Min Jae's wedding looking for vindication. Instead, she'd found herself. And in finding herself, she'd found everything. Sometimes the heaviest invitation leads to the most beautiful beginning. Josephine walked into that bar desperate and broken, asking a stranger to help her face her past. Taeyun said yes, not knowing that one fake date would become the realest thing he'd ever experienced. They turned a venue that once symbolized rejection into a place that celebrated their love. They proved that the right person doesn't ask you to be smaller. They help you grow into everything you were always meant to be. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything and helps keep these stories coming. Now I want to hear from you. Would you ever ask a stranger to be your fake date to prove a point? Have you ever had to face an ex at their wedding? And how did you handle it? And if you were Josephine, would you have gone to that wedding at all? Drop your answers in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love hearing your thoughts. Also, where in the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for following Josephine and Taeyun's journey from strangers in a storm to forever. I'll see you in the next story, and trust me, it's one worth staying for. Until then, remember that sometimes the worst heartbreak leads you straight to the love you actually deserve, and being brave enough to ask for help might just change your entire life.